Asbestos is a naturally occurring mineral that was used in the creation of many products up until the mid-1980s. The strength and fire-resistant qualities of the asbestos fibers made the product quite popular for manufacturing, fireproofing, and insulating. However, once the product began breaking down with age, or once it was disturbed during repairs, renovation, or daily wear and tear, the microscopic asbestos fibers were released into the air where they could be easily inhaled by workers. As early as the 1920s, the dangers of asbestos exposure were known. However, for the thousands of Americans working on ships and in shipyards, those hazards may have not been fully explained, and they were allowed to continue doing jobs that put their lives in danger. Navy and merchant seamen who worked in shipyards or aboard ships during the times of peak asbestos use were at high risk for asbestos exposure. Common exposure factors. Dock hands who frequently loaded and unloaded bags of asbestos were at an increased risk for exposure. These bags could easily tear or become wet and spill their contents. Cable runners who were charged with repairing, replacing, or installing communications cables were at risk when they had to remove or sand down asbestos insulation in order to make room for equipment. Electricians, plumbers, and engineers all faced a risk of exposure when required to disturb asbestos insulation or other products containing asbestos around pipes, boilers, and water lines during repair, or apply asbestos during the initial construction of the ship. Any seamen working around the boilers, condensers, compressors, turbines, or steam pumps also faced the risk of exposure, as did anyone working with the gaskets, valves, insulated packing, or flanges included on this equipment. Even seamen not directly involved in the maintenance, repair, or renovation of the ship were still at risk for asbestos exposure. The living quarters, mess hall, and other key areas of the ship contained wall and ceiling panels constructed of asbestos. As the ship would rock, vibrate, and flex in response to sea conditions, small pieces of asbestos fiber were shaken loose and released into the air. No matter how the seamen were exposed, the extent of the exposure, or the duration of the exposure, each individual that came in contact with the airborne fibers was immediately put at risk for the development of mesothelioma and another asbestos-induced disease. The risk didn't stop with the sailor. Small asbestos fibers could easily cling to the individual's hair and clothing, making secondhand exposure possible for their family members and friends. Even inhaling the smallest amount of asbestos increased the risk of developing disease. Since the symptoms of mesothelioma can take 30 to 50 years to appear, afflicted individuals generally had no idea that a disease was developing. Even after symptoms appear, including shortness of breath or difficulty breathing, chest or back pain, chronic hoarseness, fluid retention in the chest cavity, and difficulty swallowing, mesothelioma is still hard to diagnose. Since the symptoms are very general and shared by many other lung diseases, doctors do not always make the asbestos exposure connection. Mesothelioma is generally incurable, but it is still important for anyone with a history of asbestos exposure to see a doctor and to ensure that healthcare providers are aware of the asbestos exposure history. With early detection and proper medical treatment, the progression of the disease can be slowed down. Although even with treatment, individuals who are suffering from mesothelioma or other asbestos-related disease may be unable to work, may not have the energy or strength to continue on with daily hobbies or activities, and may not be able to care for themselves or the people they love. Thank you for watching. This video was produced by Asbestos.Net, a leading resource on all aspects of asbestos and mesothelioma. Our priority is to inform victims about the devastating effects of asbestos exposure, mesothelioma, asbestos cancer, asbestosis, and other asbestos-related diseases, and to advise them with a wealth of information. Individuals whose lives have been touched by mesothelioma have numerous questions and concerns. Their caregivers and family members also need accurate, reliable information. If you or a loved one have been diagnosed with mesothelioma or asbestos cancer and need more information, we invite you to visit and explore the thousands of pages of oncologist-reviewed material on Asbestos.net, to call our convenient toll-free number shown below and speak with a mesothelioma specialist, or to use the simple contact form found at Asbestos.net to request a free copy of our informative books, custom inserts, and DVD. Asbestos.net. Information and help for patients and families.